Tanse, welcome to a special edition of APTN National News. Throughout the summer, the Sagaywe Festival in Winnipeg has been helping to put a bigger spotlight on new Indigenous musicians by providing free concerts for the public. The festival also supports current artists, including Manitoba's very own Elvis of the North, Ernest Monas, who performed at the Lyric Theatre. As I found out, everyone had a special reason for being there. At age 75, Elvis of the North and Cree musician Ernest Monas is still performing on stage for all of his fans. And no, he's not slowing down anytime soon.
No, still going stronger. And it's just a number 2, but I enjoyed what I'm doing, so I don't think I'll be able to get off the stage until somebody pulls me off the stage. If I wanted to hear what you want me to.
Whether it's taking a selfie backstage or just getting up to dance to their favorite song, many in the crowd had their own heartfelt reasons for being here.
It's a Winnipeg Free Press article from 23 years ago, December 2001. He signed it to my mother at the time, and he just re-signed it tonight.
The King is a legend, and I think he's one of the few artists that can draw a pretty big crowd. Tonight we're competing against Ludacris and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers game, so I think we probably could have had a lot more people if it wasn't for those two big events, but like I said, people love Ernest Monas, and it's put on an incredible show.
When Amy Gabosh's son Solomon Beardy was diagnosed with kidney failure in 2019, she says it was Monas's music that brought hope to their 5 dark years of recovery.
So every time we hear Ernest, we're there. I don't even know if he knows us. Well, he's gonna know us, so that's why we're here.
Now, with Beardy's second chance at life, they wanted to celebrate with who they call their King of the North.
I just turned 28.
Yeah, I just had a birthday.
I had a birthday yesterday. I turned 28. My family came over.
For Marlene Biggity from Puckatawagan, she and her mom didn't want to miss their very much loved family member.
My mother wanted to come and see her grandson, Ernest Monas, and on his birthday, my mother was actually on her deathbed and she couldn't come, and she survived. She's dealing with cancer right now, and she was able to come to this one.
As for Ernest, he's giving the fans what they want, with a new upcoming album and even a new book on the way.
Well, I've been writing songs, and I'm in the process of writing my autobiography. And concentrating on writing original songs, which I've got an original album coming out sometimes either October or November.
Chris Nachkate, APTN National News, Winnipeg. 3 Cree artists are exploring the meaning of grief through an Indigenous take on a 300-old opera, Dido's Lament. This version is called Lament, and it's premiered earlier this year at the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra in Winnipeg. Reporter Sarah Bettens brings you to the rehearsal.
It's really about reminding the broader community, not just the Indigenous folks who will be here tonight, but the settlers, that we are still actively grieving, lamenting disconnection, death, and the ongoing genocide of the Canadian government.
In Winnipeg, a trio of Cree artists are reimagining a 17th century opera about grief. Titled Lament, it tells a story of loss, disconnection, and mourning from an Indigenous perspective.
The idea for this Lament concert was to kind of take over these European classical laments from the 17th century and reframe them with Jessica's amazing works that talk about the way we grieve.
On Wednesday, composer and flutist Jessica Swarvier-Wells, baritone Jonathan Adams, and filmmaker Tyson Houseman are premiering the work with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra. One song, called For Nikawe, is dedicated to Swarvier-Wells' birth mother. They were disconnected through the 60s scoop.
In the lyrics, I put it all back on the government and those institutions that forced that relationship apart. And it's also a prayer to, and I guess a lament for that lost connection.
Another, Lament for Sans Souls, is dedicated to the children who never returned home from residential school.
Lament for Small Souls, which was written after the discovery of the 751 unmarked graves in Cowes, which is where I was from. It's still really hard to perform because I'm lamenting all of those souls, but also it's the same school that my late grandmother went to.
To bring the score to life, filmmaker Tyson Houseman created visuals to be projected during the performance.
I'm trying to touch on a lot of aspects of like intrinsic Indigenous connections between bodies and land. There's a lot that talks about wildfires. There's an entire sequence that set in a recently destroyed, burned down forest area. It's touching on a lot of topics.
While they're grateful for the opportunity, the artists say the classical music world still has a lot of work to do.
I think that the classical music world has a long way to go. I don't think that we are at any point close to having equity within the field. It feels tokenistic most of the time.
The issue of our stories being framed in a convenient or digestible or palatable way for Canadians, that's nonsense. So at the end of the day, collaborations like this are really meaningful.
Lament debuts on Wednesday evening at the Des Hotels Concert Hall in Winnipeg. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A group of filmmakers in Winnipeg is telling Indigenous stories through an Indigenous lens. They meet to motivate one another as they find ways to turn oral history into feature films. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
Take two. The Winnipeg Indigenous Filmmakers Collective has been around for over a decade. It started as a handful of people hoping to help one another get a break in a tough industry.
We were being put in, circumstances that weren't the greatest.
But in recent years, its director Amanda Kinjerski, who's Saulteaux and Métis, says a surge in funding dollars through arts and culture grants has raised the stakes and its membership to well over 100 people. Now many are leading productions through an Indigenous lens from start to finish.
So that we can make sure there's authenticity, that there's care that's happening in this industry, because there's so much money going to Indigenous stories that people are taking and maybe not thinking about how do we take care of others and make sure we're telling stories in a good way. My goal was 50 for the year, 50 short films for the year, and we're on track.
On this August evening, this group of film enthusiasts are discussing the next big hit. Rachel Bolio's been here since the beginning.
We bring people in to be able to experiment and learn and see what they like, what they're capable of.
They meet monthly to help one another with everything from acting tips to script writing, as well as designing sets to planning and budgeting a film from start to finish.
We're able to tell our stories, and now we're working towards being in charge of what these budgets are going to look like for the films, what the stories are, and making sure we're actually telling them in a good way.
That can have a profound impact on the spirit within us.
Oja Jack is Bolio's first major film. She's directed and produced, and it will soon be seen at festivals.
Okay, so I'm proud that I have the language in there, and I'm also proud that the people that were part of it, 80% of filmmakers were Indigenous on set. So having a budget from the Indigenous Screen Office to be able to hire Indigenous filmmakers and Indigenous actors, and just to tell an authentic Indigenous story.
Telling Indigenous stories is also something that 20-year-old Kiera Barrett is passionate about. The Norrie House Cree Nation member found this group on social media.
Everyone was super nice and easy to talk to.
As the only visible Indigenous person in her studies at CMU College of Makeup, Art and Design in Toronto, she was grateful to find this group when she moved to Winnipeg.
Going from no people to there being a whole collective of Indigenous people also doing what I love, it was just exciting, and it was just made me happy and proud, I guess.
Barrett also credits on-the-job training here for helping her become lead makeup artist for a couple of fashion shows. Training that Kinjerski says not only helps build confidence, but helps prepare people like Barrett for the constant change within the industry.
We do traditional storytelling. We do experimental storytelling. We have a film incubator coming up where we're going to do a bunch of one-take Super 8s. We're going to do cameraless films.
Experimenting in more ways than one.
But we should get in Indigenous!
Panic! Bingo!
But always mixing a little bit of culture and Nietzsche humor every step of the way. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We'll tell you about a new ballet show that tells the story about an Indigenous elder. That story when we're back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. An archaeological dig in the Ottawa region has sparked interest with local residents. Lac Leamy Park has some of the largest pre-contact archaeological sites in the Ottawa River Basin. To mark Archaeology Month, earlier this year, the National Capital Commission opened up one site for the public to join in on the dig. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
I found something right in the corner right here. It just doesn't look like a normal rock.
Lindsay Eamon and her two sons have taken the opportunity to participate in the public dig on the Ottawa River. Eamon says she's always loved archaeology. It's important.
I think the kids really need to learn about the local history and having this connection to the local Indigenous as well as the settler colonizer history as well. I think that is just a great opportunity. Most kids don't get to have that. And then with my passion for the archaeology part as well, they've really developed that over time as well.
It's between about 6,000 to 5,000 years.
According to archaeologist Monica Micah, 14 days have been set aside over the month for the public to come and dig. It's become quite a hit.
You can see two different styles of stamps on the outside. If you look on the inside, then they would have taken a bone or a stick and carved out those X's and lines. And if we look really closely down here, we can see the fingerprint of the person who made it baked right into the clay.
The site that is open to the public is located in Gatineau, across the river from Parliament Hill.
So it's been ongoing for 10 years with a pause because of COVID. But really, the site was actually identified by an archaeologist who stopped for a smoke break and looked down at the ground and went, "Oh, that's a piece of pottery. That's a flake." So he was commissioned to do a survey of part of Lac Leamy Park and identified 14 Indigenous archaeological sites here in the park.
She says it's important work. They're hoping to find as many artifacts as possible before they disappear due to the eroding river. And what is found is not something that can just be dug up and taken home. It's cataloged and held by the National Capital Commission.
So just last Monday, a kid was digging in their pit and they came over and they're like, "Well, is this an artifact?" And they'd found a perfect arrowhead, quite small, and the style looks like it'll probably date it to 1,000 to 1,500 years ago. And they found that just digging away in the sand.
Jennifer Tanasco is from Kitiganzibi First Nation in Quebec. Tanasco is the supervisor of the Anishinaabe Ojibwakan Archaeology Field School.
It's important for the youth to come out here and to dig along the water, because from what we know, like our ancestors lived and occupied the space here at Kabeshnan, and so it's important to come out here and kind of be connected with the land and be present in archaeology.
Something Eamon and her sons are happy to experience.
Most people don't have this chance to actually take part and also help, because I know these sorts of things are a lot of work, so getting to get that hands-on is really cool.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Gatineau, Quebec.
A new ballet choreographed by Tla'amin Nation member Karen Fraser Monroe made its big debut in New York City earlier this year. Titled Shea Gatam, it tells the story of a Tla'amin elder who learns to lean on his community in a time of need. APTN Sierra Bettens chats with Fraser Monroe about the ballet and gave us a sneak peek from rehearsals.
We're here behind the scenes at the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, where dancers are busy rehearsing Cameron Fraser Monroe's new work, Shigatum, which is premiering in New York City. And today we have the pleasure of being joined by Cameron, who's a member of the Tla'amin First Nation in British Columbia. Cameron, would you mind just telling us a bit about the story behind this ballet?
Absolutely. So when I received this commission, I thought,
that the most important thing I could talk about in the moment was the way my elders in Tla'amin have a great resilience and strength behind them. There are 94-year-olds like Elder Elsie Paul who are still trying to chop her own firewood and is still very mobile. And I think that the reason behind this is that she has a wonderful community supporting her, and she's able to ask for help with the small tasks. So that's kind of what the work is about, is a dancer learning how to ask for help from his community.
Yeah, and I know this work is a partnership between, the RWB, the New York City Center, and the Bard Center for Indigenous Studies. I'm curious to know how this opportunity come about in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. And so it has come together very quickly. Normally commissions take years and years of planning, but New York City Center hosts Fall for Dance Festival every year, and they bring in some wonderful companies. And they reached out to the RWB to commission me to create a new work in partnership with the Bard Center for Indigenous Studies. So part of the event is a lecture and demonstration at Bard College, as well as a talkback in New York City. And we're taking this work down to premiere on September 26th. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, and so I know the meaning of Shigatam is to lift someone. I was curious to know, how do you kind of convey that through movement in this ballet?
Yes, it's to lift someone up, and it starts quite literally with someone standing on the shoulders of his community, and then he falls from his kind of peak of leadership and has to relearn how he negotiates those relationships and how he relates to the people around him. So, of course, there's a lot of physical lifting, but it's also very much about the way we lift up our elders and support those people, because they're not superhumans, they're people just like us as well.
Yeah, and I know the score for this ballet is composed by Jeremy Dutcher. I was curious to know, how did you work with him to convey this narrative through both movement and music?
That's right, and I'm super excited because Jeremy Dutcher's album just won the Polaris Prize, and he's the only individual in that awards history to have won it twice.
Jeremy Dutcher!
It's very exciting that we're taking that music to premiere this ballet in New York. So I didn't collaborate with him directly, but I did draw a lot of inspiration from that beautiful music, from that beautiful score, in order to tell this story. And in this case, the music actually came first. I heard that music and I knew I was going to have to choreograph to it, and I was saving it for the right opportunity, and I didn't have to wait long because this came up. And I'm, as I said, really excited to take Jeremy's work to Fall for Dance.
Mm-hmm. And I know you also have a background in grass and hoop dancing, and I'm curious to know, how do you incorporate those styles into your work?
Yeah, so like all artists, I'm influenced by my background and my upbringing, and for me that included Ukrainian dance and grass dance and hoop dance, as well as Coast Salish styles of dance. And then when I was 15, I moved here to the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, did my ballet training, worked as a contemporary dancer as well. And so I braid all of those influences into one movement vocabulary, and you see all of those influences present in the work.
Yeah, so you have less than a week till you and the dancers are all headed to New York City, but I'm curious to know, with this premiere, what do you want people to learn from this work and take away from this ballet?
Yeah, well, I'm honored that we have this opportunity to share this art on the world stage. I think that it's a huge opportunity to share other Indigenous artists as well as myself. So we mentioned Jeremy Dutcher, but we also have lighting design from Andy Morrow. So I just hope that we will be present on this world stage with companies like the Dutch National Ballet, Boston Ballet, of course, New York City Ballet, and to show them the excellence that all of our artists are cultivating in our own communities, and maybe to have an opportunity to share that in a wider form. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping they'll take away from it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with us, Cameron, and yeah, best of luck in New York, and back to you in studio.
A Winnipeg artist is making it their mission to bring more Métis history to Manitoba. That story when we're back in 2.5. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Winnipeg artist J.D. Hawk is on a mission to immortalize Métis history through his paintings. A selection of his works are on display at the oldest home in Winnipeg. Here's APTN's intern Kieran Aho with more.
Here at the Seven Oaks House Museum in Winnipeg, prominent Métis artist J.D. Hawk has opened up his new exhibit titled Hiding in plain sight, it features a selection of Hawk's portraits.
I wanted anybody that I respected and knew who was Métis to tell their story through my paintings. So you'll go through the museum and you'll see some of these portraits. That's exactly what it is. It's a visual record of history of a Métis person, where they came from and where their family came from. And to me, that was really important to do.
For the summer, Hawk has lent the museum 6 of his original oil paintings. The chosen works document his heritage and the resilience of the Métis people.
It lets people outside the Métis homeland know who we are, where we come from, not just the hardships, but also that we stuck together as a family and community.
With commissions from organizations such as the Manitoba Métis Federation and the Royal Canadian Mint, Hawk has come a long way, but it hasn't always been easy for Hawk, as for much of his life, he has experienced homelessness.
I was going through a depression, and I didn't know what depression was. I had no idea what it was.
For most of his life, Hawk has practiced art as a hobby, but his creative pursuits were interrupted by periods of financial instability.
There was times where I ended up losing everything or partial stuff, and so it set me back. I'd move, I'd lose stuff, be set back, and then eventually I lost all my art stuff, and I never wanted to paint again because that was the one thing that was truly me. I didn't want to do it again. I was just so heartbroken of always losing my stuff.
But in his time of need, he found inspiration in the work of another. While traveling through Nova Scotia, Hawk came across the work of Maud Lewis, whose paintings depicted subjects of joy despite her difficult life.
And so that struck me is that, you know, I have this gift to paint people, portraits, things that I see, very visual, that it'd be selfish of me just to quit. That when I return back to Winnipeg, I should start up again. And so that's what happened. I started back up again because of that inspiration. And from there, it just skyrocketed.
Since moving back to Winnipeg, Hawk has found purpose through his paintings, honoring the Métis community.
It feels so good to know that this is who I am, and this is the community that I belong to. They accept me as part of their community. They've shown nothing but kindness and love towards me. And that's probably why I do paint what I paint. Like, I want to give back somehow.
He tells us about one of his paintings, which he found symbolizes his journey.
There's this one where I have a picture of a horse, and he's kind of looking back. And I have him purposely looking back because it tells my story, where I went through hardships, I went through the homelessness. And so this horse represents that you can look back to see how far you've come. And that is a happy moment, to look back, wow, did I come from far away and now I'm here. I've gotten to a better place, and I'm so happy for that.
J.D. Hawk's Hiding in Plain Sight exhibit is open at the Seven Oaks House Museum until the 31st of August. Kieran Aho, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Beautiful work, J.D. Hawk. And that's our special arts edition look back of APTN National News. From everyone at our HQ in Winnipeg and from our reporting staff from across the country, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.